Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to In Liberty and Health. Hopefully, last week's episodes were really, really good. I thought the conversations I had with Rachel Wilson and David Lilly were very, very entertaining. So make sure if you are new here or if you're a returning listener, please go back and listen to those episodes because I thought they were very, very good, very, very entertaining. A little bit on my mind today. Going to be a solo podcast. Tomorrow's show is going to be really, really cool. I promise you guys are going to absolutely love it. It's going to be kind of like a reunion show after 2 years, but about useful idiots and how people kind of put themselves into a corner. Maybe not even necessarily put themselves into a corner, but more of align themselves with our government, our military-industrial complex, our pharmaceutical industries narratives without necessarily realizing it and doing the work for them when it comes to the propaganda, the way that we think about things, and the way that we talk about things. One thing that's coming up a lot lately that I've talked about extensively on this podcast is about China buying the farmland. And I've talked about it on Twitter, but maybe not on the podcast about the Chinese nationals coming across the border. So we're going to get into that a little bit today. And Kevin in here early. Hi, JC. I'm sure JC will be in at any minute. If you guys would feel so kind, hit the like button. I don't know why I drug that out a little bit. Hit the like button. Send in super chats if you feel so inclined and so generous. And without further ado, guys, let's rock and roll. What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovic. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health, and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass. Okay? All right.
And one more time, welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out. Nice. Thanks, Kevin. My pee-pee hurts. What do? Thank you for the super chat. One of my favorite memes from back in the day, and I still say it all the time, is instructions unclear, penis caught in ceiling fan, which I don't know why I said that weird. Ceiling fan. So for people who don't know, there was apparently like this Reddit story or something like that where this dude was trying to put together a ceiling fan, and I guess he literally got his dick stuck in the fan. And it's like, well, how do you do that? I'd put it up on the screen, but I'm like borderline scared I'd get a nudity strike, even though it was like a cartoon. There's a picture of this dude with no pants on, swinging from a fucking ceiling fan. His dick caught in it. So thanks, Kevin. I appreciate that, brother. Hopefully he's all well in your neck of the woods, and hopefully everything for you is going well. I know you got a lot of cool projects going on. So everybody, if you're listening, make sure you go check out Shooter McKevin1 on Twitter. I think his @ is. He can comment and put his name on the screen. I'll put it up here. But he's a good friend of mine. He's been on the show. I think he did the show right before or after I had Dave Smith on a couple of months ago. And we talked a little bit about QAnon. He's one of the people that's kind of got me thinking about QAnon. And actually, some of this will probably bleed into today's topic, but he's also real familiar with stonks and stuff like that, and does like a lot of really, really cool music stuff. So if you guys are into heavy metal, much like I am, then you will definitely like a lot of the stuff that he's doing. So I want to talk about being useful idiots today because I see a lot of people in our sphere, our camp. Yeah, okay, so I was right. Shooter McKevin1. There you go. If you're watching, Shooter McKevin tag, it's Shooter McKevin1. Make sure you put the one on the end of that. But I see a lot of people in our camp kind of sharing the narratives that the people that we despise and we're supposed to be against would propagate. So, what's making the rounds on Twitter today is Dr. Phil going on Joe Rogan. And I actually enjoyed the first time Dr. Phil was on Joe Rogan. Like, he actually came off as a lot more of like a sincere character than you would have thought he would have been for being on like mainstream television for a long time. Um, Hold on here. Thanks. I'll listen if you want. Nah, dude, you're good. You're good. I like doing these live shows so that way I can interact with people. But Dr. Phil talking about China buying all the farmland, which if you listen to this podcast for any period of time, you know that this is like just shoots off all the fucking signals in my brain, drives me absolutely insane because it's not true. It is not true. China is not buying up all the farmland. There's no proof of that. And if anything, the proof is that they literally own like a fraction of 1% of all foreign owned farmland in the entire country. I mean, this stuff literally takes like minutes. You could find it. I mean, just page after page after page. With our own government, like, of course, they would be tracking this stuff because they're trying to go to war with China. I don't know how many times I feel this out for people. And then, like, people who follow me come in and start giving me shit. Like, have you not followed me for any extended period of time to see what I've talked about? Just day in, day out, calling out the propaganda. And the worst part is that when it comes to the China stuff, people are so propagandized. When you tell them they're propagandized, oh, you're repeating the mainstream narrative. What? The mainstream narrative is that we want to stick it in China's face and tell them that we're going to blow up Beijing and that you're committing genocide against the Uyghurs and you're buying up all our farmland. Stacey Abrams repeated this fucking line. So who's exactly mainstream? The people saying they're buying up all the farmland, or the people saying, hey, the truth is they're actually not doing that? So to go back to the podcast, I want to say it was episode 234, and you guys could go back and check. I was just talking with Dave DeCamp about this. If you go back and check, what you'll actually find is that on episode 234, China's stake in overall ownership of American farmland had greatly increased when they bought a pork company back in like 2014, I want to say. And even then, it still wasn't even like that much farmland overall. Like when you compare it to Canada, Israel, France, Italy, um, Spain, I think. China's not even like the top 20, if I remember correctly. And if they are, they may be like 18 or 17, something like that. They're nowhere near the top holders of foreign owned farmland here in the United States. So why am I ranting and raving about this? Because you stupid motherfuckers who don't listen to me just can't get it in your fucking skulls that you're being propagandized. You are being useful idiots. So what else does this have to do? Like, if you saw the thumbnail, I had Joe Biden and John Fetterman on there, and I wanted to put Donald Trump in there, but we'll kind of get to that a little bit later. Everybody is having this revelation. If you listen to the podcast I did with Nick from the Revolutionary Blackout Network, we talked about this a little bit as well. Everybody's saying, "Oh my God, John Fetterman's so base. He's talking about the immigration crisis. He's good on Israel. He's good on China. He's saying all this awesome stuff." This is who he has always been. Did you guys? I mean, I know he's hard to follow along with because John Fetterman is not a very competent person. He is not an impressive person. He is difficult to follow. He's gone. For some reason, Democrats love running these mentally incompetent people. Well, actually, my conspiracy mind tells me that it's pretty much because they're a good bastion for control, right? If you could put somebody like Joe Biden or John Fetterman up front and they get a lot of votes, they get a lot of attention, then they can be used to usher in this Democrat woke agenda, which really isn't that far off from a lot of like the Republican goals when you look at what they're really advocating for, including Donald Trump. Like, really, the only two separate issues that Donald Trump and Joe Biden really seem to disagree on is like, should we fully support all of these wars and should the border be open? Donald Trump, to his credit, is good on the border stuff. And maybe I can engage with a little bit of this because, like, this has been a thing on libertarian Twitter that everybody seems to be going on about is just the whole border crisis. So, um, when it comes to the uh, the border stuff, this is a pretty nuanced topic when it comes to libertarians because we don't believe in public property, right? We don't believe that the government should have any public property because we generally don't believe that the government should exist, or we believe in like minimal government function. So therefore, like all land and functions and acreage, whatever, should all be privatized. Um, but that being said, that's not the world we live in. We have the world that we have, and we have the world that we would like to live in. So when it comes to the border stuff, honestly, I kind of tend to agree with the Dave Smith position, and it's that if we're going off of what taxpayers prefer, and this gets pretty sticky, and it's not like a perfect libertarian stance, but the immigrants coming across the border do not have a right to the land that they're going to, and there are incentives here for those people to come here. In a more ideal world, I would say we should get rid of all the incentives that are giving people the incentive to come here. But that's not the world we live in. That's the world we would like to work towards. Um, the people coming across the border do not have a right to come into this country and act as they so fit, because it is for the most part private land, and although there's government land, um Texans do not want a flood of immigrants coming into their state, because if you look at polling data, and you know what, maybe we'll pull this up. So I don't know the actual numbers, but you know what, maybe we could actually do this, and I will actually pull this up just for the full sake of transparency, and we can kind of do this a little bit together. And this is kind of out of the context of being a useful idiot. This is just more for my own curiosity and for everybody else's information as well, because that's what I do here is I like to give you guys information. Okay, what as you can see, I Google stuff about World of Warcraft. How do Americans feel about open versus closed borders? 56% stated that the southern border is open and that our immigration laws are not being enforced. From the Center for Immigration Studies, Pew Research Center. Okay, here we go. This is going to be a little bit interesting. So hopefully you guys can all see this. Just 23% of Americans say that the government is doing a good job of dealing with the large number of people seeking asylum in the border, while more than 3 times as many say it's doing a bad job, which is actually very, very interesting. Call yourself a nerd, play Magic the Gathering. Pussy. No, I love World of Warcraft. I'm sorry, and I unapologetically love World of Warcraft. But anyways, that being said, um 73% of people in the US, when polled at least, and obviously this isn't the full 330 million people. Yes, there's tons of nuance here, but you can kind of get a good idea of what this poll is saying and how people feel. So actually, how many people did they survey? I don't know if they note survey US adults conducted June 5th through 11th. I want to see if they have. No, they don't have the amount of people polled. Anyways, just at like a brief look at this poll, basically you can conclude that I will stop the screen here. That more people than not actually prefer the border to be shut, or well, I shouldn't say the border to be shut, but they feel like the border is being handled incompetently. And I would tend to agree that if you have hundreds of thousands of people a month and millions of people per year coming across the border, and you're supposed to have some kind of, difficult immigration process to make sure that people are assimilating to the country, adopting our values, and are good people who are coming here. Um, if you have 70, majority of people saying that that's not being done right, then clearly something's wrong. So, people are coming onto the land uninvited and taking resources, jobs, and doing stuff that other Americans could be doing. Although some of them, there is a good argument to be said that like Americans don't want to do these jobs because they're not taken already. But this is neither here nor there. We're talking about a lot of people coming into the country unchecked, unvetted, and just kind of doing what they please. Do I believe there's good people there? Sure, I'm absolutely sure there is. Or do I believe there's bad people there? Yes, absolutely. But this kind of goes to the point that I wanted to get to, is that like I did a thread on this, and I will see if I can pull this up here real quick, because I actually sent this to some of the guys that I talk to pretty frequently. Where is it? When I had Googled the amount of Chinese people coming across the border, because people had been losing their mind about this, they were so concerned about the Chinese people, but not the overall amount of people coming across the border. Okay, so I tweeted this out. I said, China's not invading America through the southern border. Out of 3.2 million people who crossed the border, 24,000 of them were Chinese. You guys eyes gloss over and you stop thinking anytime someone says China. And I posted my sources here. You guys can go ahead and check this stuff. If you go on to my Twitter, you can find this very, very easily. And like, really, it didn't take that long at all to find what I'm on about here. So like, if people get so freaked out anytime you say China, and I get it, because you've been told since the time you're a kid, what happens when something breaks? Oh, cheap Chinese junk. we get a lot of our manufacturing goods from there because they're net exporters. But what people also don't realize that they're also net importer, or well, I shouldn't say net because net would mean that they're taking in more than they're exporting. So like when it comes to manufacturing, they're like a net exporter. But when it comes to food, they're actually a net importer because a lot of their land is inhabitable and they can't do a lot of farming on their land because they have a lot of deserts. So are we worried about the 0.75% of Chinese people coming across the border? Or are we worried about like the 99% of people who are coming across? I'd be more worried about the 99% of people who are coming across. And the reason why I entitled this show Useful Idiots is because this specific issue is something that people are making themselves useful idiots for the military industrial complex over. When you say that China's buying up all the farmland and that is verifiably, certifiably false, you're a useful idiot for the military industrial complex, for Joe Biden, for Frank Gaffney, for Anthony Blinken, for Jake Sullivan, for Lloyd Austin, for all the worst people you could possibly think of, Marco Rubio, Bill Kristol, you fucking name it. You are a useful idiot when you repeat these lies. When you say China's invading through the southern border, you are a useful idiot for the regime, for all those same names, because you know what that does? That cements into people's minds that China is here looming over your heads and threatening to crush your civilization and dominate the world. Even though, like, when you look at all economic markers and how China's actually doing internally, they cannot dominate the world. Scott Horton's made this point, and I think it's a good point, and I think it bears repeating here. Do you really think that China looks at what we've done all over the world over the last 30 years, 22, unalives a day from veterans, 30, what is it, $32 trillion in debt. People can't afford housing, inflation, through the fucking roof. Do you really think in issues in all these countries, now we're floating war with Iran and Russia, and then we're also poking it in China's face, but, bombing Libya, Syria, Yemen, Pakistan, Somalia, Iraq, Afghanistan, all these countries that we've just fought and died for. Do you really think China's sitting there looking at all this and saying, like, wow, they did such a great job, and what if we could do that? I don't think they are. And if you look at their economy and the way that their people feel about their government and their military capabilities, I don't think they want to. I mean, why would you want to become a global empire like the US? I mean, people knock libertarians for their hate for Israel, and I get it because they're saying that, oh, you guys just hate Israel and Ukraine because you guys have a Marxist worldview that's just anti-West, which I think actually is a fair criticism because if you look at like the Middle East and compare that to the US, Israel, or Ukraine, let's be honest here, the standard of living here in the US and the other countries that I mentioned are much, much, much higher than that of the Middle Eastern countries. But you can't leave that out of the context that the US has completely destroyed those countries. Never do the regimes work for them. Lou Rockwell. Was that really Lou Rockwell? I thought that was Daniel McAdams. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know Dave Smith always cited Dan McAdams when he said never do the work of the CIA for them. And I completely agree with that. So if it is Lou Rockwell, then yeah, Lou Rockwell. I never do the regime's work for them. Quoted by Lou Rockwell. I've heard it from Dan McAdams, so I'm just running with that. But if it was Lou Rockwell, then once again, I'll give credit where it's due. But yeah, that's the thing. Like, you should not be carrying the narratives of the people who hate you and want to send you to wars to die. Um, when it comes to the China stuff, once again, I don't think they have global ambitions. Like if you look at the One Road or the Belt and Road Initiative, they're not making money off that. And more than likely, it's going to lead to the fucking collapse of their economy because they're not using usury, which is unreasonably high interest rates, and they're forgiving some of these loans. So like, how long can you just sit here and hand out money until you can't? I mean, we're starting to see a lot of the consequences of 2020. So this can kind of get into the point of like why I think people who are obsessed with Trump and think that Trump is going to save us all are useful idiots. I don't know how you can look at Trump's 4 years as president and think anything other than him being controlled opposition or good for the Democrats and what they want to do. Did he stick it to them every here and there? And did he kind of change the cultural aspect and ethos of the right? And did he bring some good things to the table? Yes, he absolutely did. And I would never say that he didn't. But on a more holistic view, anybody's whose presidency ended in 2020, arguably one of the worst years for Americans in like recent history, I don't know how you can say that he's some bastion for freedom. And he's still talking about that certain medical treatment. He still doesn't think he did anything wrong in 2020. At a certain point, if you still have all this faith in Donald Trump and think that he's going to save the country from, the pedos and Jeffrey Epstein's and all that, then I have to question if you're critically thinking about these issues. I have to question if you're really seeing this the whole way through. So, like, let's talk about the whole mother of all bombs, because that's the only thing that people ever say. Oh, he bombed Syria. I disagree with that. Well, he actually did more drone strikes and killed more people via drone strikes than Obama did in just 4 years alone. So, if he was so anti-war and he was so against the regime, then why did he kowtow to them every single time that it actually came time to do something meaningful? Assad must go, right? That's what everybody said. Okay, but then he caved and bombed Syria. I mean, he didn't commit to regime change, but he bombed Syria. And then he continued to veto the war in Yemen, the coup in Venezuela. I mean, I've covered this stuff tons on the podcast, but I just have to question, like, if you guys think that Trump is just some bastion of freedom, then at a certain point, you might be a useful idiot because, I mean, he does everything that they want to do. And really, nobody can really say what the huge difference between Joe Biden is, or what the difference between Joe Biden and Trump is. I think there's a hope that Trump could do better things if he wasn't strung up by Russiagate and didn't allow people to become petty tyrants. Okay, but I mean, there you go. If the net effect is that he got boxed in there, then I mean, what's the difference here? But let's also talk about the fact that like Trump sanctioned Russia and then he sent the Javelin anti-tank missiles into Ukraine. It's always people always say, "Oh, this war would have never happened under Trump." Okay, but I mean, he was hawkish on Russia. And then on top of that, he said what's happening in Ukraine is a genocide. It's not. I mean, there's lots of people fucking dying, don't get me wrong. And we're going to review that a little bit tomorrow. So maybe this is a good time to announce that tomorrow, the guys from Libertarian Institute, Connor Freeman, Patrick McFarlane, and Kyle Anselone are coming back on the show because I had them on 2 years ago. And I think this is just like a really, really good time to talk about 2 years in Ukraine and then all the other stuff that's kind of happened in the foreign policy realm. Um, I really want to talk about that stuff, but like the war absolutely would have happened under Trump because he was on the same trajectory. And that's what a lot of people don't want to acknowledge. Like, yeah, he had a better relationship with Putin than Biden did, but let's like objectively look at this and realize what it is. I mean, Biden and Obama were too scared to send the Javelin anti-tank missiles into Ukraine because they knew that it would piss off Russia and they would consider that to be a very, very bold move. Trump did it anyways. He got impeached because he tried to hold it up. So, I mean, what are we doing here? As a mechanic, do you have any thoughts on the 2014 Grand Cherokee? If you could tell me what engine's in that, I would be a little bit more of help to you. In my experience, they don't seem too bad. Jeeps are like the only good thing, like the Cherokees, and yeah, the Cherokees, right? The Cherokees seem to be the only thing that Jeep got right in the last like 60 years. Chrysler, that is. Other than that, literally like everything else by Chrysler is fucking garbage. If it's a V6, the only thing I know that like goes bad on those frequently, they have like an oil filter housing, and what happens is if you get some big dumb motherfucker like me that cranks down the oil filter, and I don't do this, but I did do it once, then you can get an oil leak that goes down. It looks like a rear main seal or something on top of the transmission, but it's actually just the oil filter housing. That's the only thing I really seen go wrong with them. I'm not a Jeep guy. I haven't worked on a lot of Jeeps. I did when I worked for my dad, but I mean that was like almost a decade ago now. So I don't think they're too terrible, but if you're looking at SUVs, my personal recommendation would be to go for a 2014. Actually, you go for a 2014 GMC Terrain with a 6-cylinder. Do not get the 4-cylinder. Do not get 4-cylinder. The Terrains or the Equinoxes with a 6-cylinder, really, really good. In fact, they're so good that I convinced my wife to get one a couple years back. The newer Acadias, like the 2019 and up, those ones are pretty good. The newer Terrains are pretty good. So if you're looking for something like that, Honda CRV, Acadia, Terrain, Toyota RAV4, uh, the Ford Escapes aren't too bad. I know my in-laws have one, and it's been good to them. So I don't know. I would just recommend going for a GM. I would never recommend Chrysler to anybody. Let me run a commercial real quick, and we will just get right back into it. All right, guys, we are going to take a quick break from the show to tell you about the show's sponsor. We are now brought to you by Fox and Sons coffees. You can see right here, I got the Den Blend Dark. Really enjoy that. I've been drinking a lot of their Brazil honey prep. Right here, as you can hear, there's not a lot of beans left in it because I've been drinking it quite a bit. Just tell you a little bit about Fox and Sons, why I support them and why you should too, is that Stephen had started the company up in Michigan to help teach his son about entrepreneurship. I'm all about that, and I do firmly believe that in order to spread liberty in our lifetimes, we have to support those who support similar values as us. And Stephen does support all the same libertarian values that I bring and talk about on the show a lot. So go to foxandsons.com, use code Kyle at checkout to get 15% off of orders $25 or more. And there's always free shipping whenever you place an order that is more than $37.99. Find their coffee absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure you will too. So one more time, go to foxandsons.com, use code Kyle at checkout to get yourself a little discount. Let them know I sent you, and support the coffee that supports you. All right, guys, thanks. Back to the show. 5.7 4x4 V8. The only thing I'd be careful about is what happens to a lot of V8 engines is not just exclusive to Jeep, but because the engine, the way that it idles, the way that it sits, over time, the manifold bolts will sometimes back out and break. And that could be pretty expensive because typically what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to put all new manifolds on it. You're going to have to put new gaskets on it. Then you're going to have the bolt drilled out or extracted out of the head. That could get pretty ugly. I've done a few myself and they are not fun. And I have to imagine on a Jeep, it's probably pretty tight in there. So you're looking at probably a pretty hefty repair bill. If you don't need a V8, I would not recommend getting a V8 just because the fucking gas mileage, the tires, and all that stuff. But yeah, okay. So back to the point of the show. Useful idiots. Trump still is now saying that, like, oh, I'll end the war in Russia by, or I'll end the war in Ukraine by making NATO give Ukraine more money, and I will give Ukraine more arms and money than ever before. Like, does anybody really like listen to this stuff, or do people just like, I don't know, nobody can like objectively assess the way that Trump is. Like, people either think he's Satan incarnate or they think he's like Jesus Christ himself. He's just a man. He's like the rest of us. He's an asshole. He likes to eat shit and fuck just like the rest of us. And that's what I like about him. That is what I like about him, is that he's a dude just like everybody else. The whole grab him by the pussy stuff, I think that's hilarious. Like when RFK, that whole controversy with the wow comment, I actually thought it was pretty funny because it makes him kind of human. Like, you seem less politician-y. And Trump became a politician the moment he got elected. But like, what's so likable about him is that he's relatable. He talks like the way that everybody else talks, and that he kind of understands the struggle of the modern guy. Do I actually think he like innately understands it? No, but he like at least pays homage to the people who support him, which is a lot more than you could say for Joe Biden and all the other politicians out there. But back to like the John Fetterman point, when you're saying John Fetterman is so based and so great, like even Donald Trump Jr. was saying this, oh, he's so great on all this stuff. He's more based than most of the Republicans. Who does that serve? Who is that helping? It's not the people you want to help. It's not even helping your dad, dude. Referring to Donald Trump Jr. It's helping the progressives. All the worst people, the neo-progressives, neoliberals, neocons, it's helping all them. And that's exactly why I think you guys are controlled opposition. Thanks for the input, of course, JC. I appreciate the super chat, brother. And especially the penny off. For those who know about the penny off, it's the Jack Murphy cuck article. So that's awesome. Yeah, dude, if I had to give you a recommendation, like I said, GMC Terrain with a 6-cylinder, Chevrolet Equinox with a 6-cylinder, or one of the newer ones, they have a 4-cylinder turbo. Acadia 2019 or newer because the older ones are a little bit junkier. RAV4, CRV, stuff like that. Generally, like my go-tos are General Motors, Honda, Toyota, and Ford to a lesser degree, but Ford's okay. Just and if you do get anything, always get an aftermarket warranty, just because I think that's it's a really, really good idea because shit breaks, and when shit breaks, shit can get expensive. But, when it comes to some of the China stuff too, um, the Beijing Biden stuff in particular is what makes people useful idiots for the regime. Because Joe Biden has been the most hawkish president when it comes to China. The military stance and just repeatedly saying that he will defend Taiwan militarily because that's our commitment. Um, People said, "Oh, well, he walked it back. The White House walked it back." Well, the last time they said that, they said, "I think the president's comment stands for themselves." Not good. But you know what? To give it to the Republicans too, Russiagate. Russiagate made a whole bunch of leftists useful idiots for the regime as well. If you are leftist and you are anti-war, or even if you were like a never Trump Republican who's bought in on Russiagate, Scott and I did a whole show on this. It was great. A couple weeks ago. Feel free to check that out. That was second episode I did of debunking propaganda. Um, when it comes to Russiagate, really that was meant to walk us closer to this, new Cold War with Russia and China. That's really what these two things are meant to do. Now, granted, the hysteria surrounding Russiagate was a lot more because, I mean, it was the mainstream media kind of biting into this. But like even some of all the alt media or the newer mainstream media has all been in on Beijing Biden. I mean, you hear this on fucking Joe Rogan now. They're talking about all this China stuff. Like I said earlier, Dr. Phil, Maid Nuaz, or whatever the fuck his name is, he's always saying China's to blame for everything. Fucking Mike Baker's always on Joe Rogan. Like, come on. Beijing Biden, Moscow, or Moscow Mitch is such transparent propaganda. They're like pro wrestling nicknames. Yeah, that's really what it is. It's all kayfabe, and this is like the whole lawsuits with Trump thing. I don't know. Modern day politics is just so exhausting, and maybe some of my listeners will resonate with this. Um, I don't want to say I've stopped commenting on politics, but I mean, I'll still comment on it, and I'm sure you guys see it. But like, I don't know, it's just also predictable. Like, I know what the right wingers are going to say before they even say it. Anytime an issue comes up, I know what the left wingers are going to say. So like, anytime an issue comes up, just like the default stances, and then after that, all the fucking engagement brokers break out on Twitter to give their hot take. Sorry, I should probably like back this up a little bit, but like all the engagement brokers are gonna give their hot take, and they're gonna say all the same thing, maybe word a little bit differently. And sometimes they say the exact same thing. So I don't know. I just can't get into the fucking sell your ass for clout and say the predictable line that every person's waiting to hear from your favorite libertarian or your favorite Republican or whatever. It's just it gets so tiresome and exhausting, and I don't know, I can't get with it. And that's kind of why I've leaned into some more of the red pill stuff and some more foreign policy, because there's like more content here and there's more to talk about, because this stuff is also like more important. Now, like granted, I'd hate to say it, but like the foreign policy stuff, it's almost impotent. But I also feel like it's good to put the information out there and let people kind of understand what's going on, so that way they can understand and interpret the propaganda as it's coming out. But like when it comes to the red pill stuff, this is why I enjoy doing cognitive vigilance, because like we get to talk about more important stuff and have a very, very nuanced discussion. And granted, like Ryan and Brandy are both poly, but this still doesn't mean that we don't have good conversations surrounding culture, intersectional dynamics, and stuff like that. And like I'm beyond grateful that I'm good friends with the guys like Rolo, Ryan, and all the guys from the red pill sphere, because I think that stuff's so much more important than political stuff. And like that what's going to happen in 2024 is that the Democrats are going to continue to fucking shit a brick over Trump, and then the Republicans are going to be like, oh my god, look at Trump being politically persecuted, and then it's going to be this fucking giant cabal, this fucking freaking out over all the lawsuits. And then guess what? Lawsuits go away and everybody forgets about them and they get dropped, and then it happens again and everybody freaks out and then it gets dropped. And then something with Joe Biden will come up, and then the regime will let it go, and nothing will happen because he's their guy, and then you let it go. Like anybody that's watching this stuff, you see this constantly play out. And yeah, you could say I'm being that it's not happening, bro, nothing's happening, bro, whatever. But I mean, like, what else are you supposed to do? I mean, it's so fucking predictable. You're saying debating theory online is an important. You've been paying attention recently. Yeah, it is. Um, but like, I don't know. Like, I see these libertarians who are, and I blocked so many of them, and I'm sure they're absolutely fantastic people. I'm sure if I met them in person, we'd have a good conversation. We'd probably agree on majority stuff, but like, I don't want to sit here and play 21 questions with people about theory that's currently irrelevant, most people don't care about, for the most part, is never going to be enacted, and that like isn't going to be widely adopted and really just isn't relevant. Like, what is the purpose of this? What are you serving if you're just sitting here debating theory all day? Like, I see that fucking Liquid Zulu dude, and once again, I'm sure he's a good dude. I listened to a debate he did with Jay Dyer, and I see why Jay walked off. And pay attention, Jay Dyer, you may see him around these neck of the woods sometime soon. But regardless, you see people talking about this stuff, and it's like, what's your plan? What is the plan to get to a libertarian utopia? Like, at least Dave Smith gets on big shows that could talk about this stuff to lots and lots of people. At least when you have Dave DeCamp going on Russell Brand's show, Ron Paul, you name it, he's getting to these huge audiences and spreading his message and teaching people about, anti-war stuff. Like, that is huge. It's fucking awesome. But like, these people, what what's your plan? Are you just going to sit there and beat people with theory until they submit? Like, nobody's going to do that. And people generally don't give a fuck about you, your theory, your opinions, unless they already know you. And this is why I've preached since the beginning of the podcast that like you need to have good relationships with people before you ever convert them to libertarianism or your chosen ideology. I had the same reaction as your tweet about how Zulu and Ace do more to turn people away from libertarianism. Like, look, I'm not saying that they're bad on theory. Like, they're, let's face it, they are way, 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 way more informed about libertarian theory than I ever could be, and I am. I'll be the first one to admit I'm not a perfect libertarian. But like that being said, you have to be a charismatic, attractive, entertaining, charming person in order to draw people to you to be convinced by you. They don't have that. I'm sorry, they don't have it. Maybe my Twitter persona isn't all that charming, but like I guarantee you, if we're hanging out in person, you could see I'm a very charismatic person. Hopefully, when I do this podcast and I'm interacting with you guys, you see that I'm an entertaining, charismatic person. I mean, my dogs like me at least, and I'm married, so there's that. Playing a band too, so I got to be all right. As Argentina showed us, we won't get closer to utopia until things get a lot worse. For those who can't see, I'm shrugging. Put my hands up. And as much as I would hate to say that, you have to give people the incentive to let things change. And I've retweeted this tweet, and I'm probably going to retweet it now because Phobes, you reminded me of it. If you are, as long as there's high noons, porn, food, your Dairy Queen Blizzard, and this right here, you guys will never rebel. As long as your dollar will still be good at the store, as long as prices ain't too high that you can't afford to pay your rent and do all the things you want to do, you will never rebel. You don't need to. You're comfortable. You're sedated. You will not do shit because everything's provided for you. You have no reason to get up and start the revolution. So that being said, yes, people will not change their habits until things get a lot worse. Could I be wrong? Sure, but I don't know. I guess I mean, voting habits won't change unless people really start feeling the pain. Yeah, exactly. That's essentially it. The best way to win people over is to be an impressive and admirable person. Become a natural elite in your local area. Absolutely. Well, I've kind of said that to a large degree. Like I look at my dad, and hopefully he's listening. He drops in every here and there, mostly for like the Sunday morning stuff. So if you guys ever want to talk to my dad, whenever you see Glenn come up in the comments, that's my dad, and you could say hi to him. But you'd have to probably be over on Facebook. He doesn't really come on YouTube. So if you do find me on Facebook, which my name is right there down at the bottom left corner, if you want to add me on Facebook and watch there, I appreciate that. But try to get people over to YouTube. But anyways, that's irrelevant. I look at someone like my dad, and I want to say that he's kind of like a natural elite. And I see, how many people know him. And I think about my family's business. And it's kind of cool to see people that say, I knew your dad, I knew your grandfather, I knew your great grandfather, and now I know you. And it's been interesting to see 3 or 4 generations of Matovics work on our cars and do this. Um, if my dad was a libertarian, which I want to say he has some libertarian leanings, he is for no foreign aid to anybody, which I really like. He's a big Donald Trump guy, and I can't blame him because he's a private or small business owner, and Trump really spoke for him and I think what he represents. So, good on him. But that being said, I look at stuff like that, and if he decided to be a libertarian tomorrow and preach libertarian messaging, then I think a lot of people would buy into it because they already know him, they're familiar with him, and they trust him, and they trust that he's a reliable person and somebody they can trust. That's who I want to be to other people who aren't libertarians, friends, and people that I know. Um, and I'm not here to evangelize for libertarianism. I'm not here to evangelize for the red pill. I'm not here to evangelize for anything. I'm here to give you the information. In my personal life, I'm going to talk to people about these issues. If they change their mind, they change their mind. If not, they don't. Um, I'm just here hopefully to give people good information and then they can improve their lives or do whatever they're going to do with that information. But basically, to round out this podcast, I really wanted to just kind of highlight, don't be a useful idiot. When you see something that seems hyperbolic, that seems crazy, always do your own research. And if there's somebody that you trust saying something, including me, like all the stuff that I've laid out in this podcast, you can look up for yourself. And if I'm wrong, let me know. Like Rothbardian had messaged me and said that I got the confidence interval thing wrong on my testosterone podcast. And I was like, yeah, okay, thanks. Like if I'm wrong, I should be corrected. If I get shit wrong, I want to be corrected because I'd much rather be right. And if I'm not wrong about anything, that means I have no room to improve. So anytime you see regime talking points, or not even regime talking points, but anything that seems a little out of whack, or really anything, even something that you trust, you should always do your due diligence before you bite whole hog on it and see what the truth of the matter is. And sometimes you'll find that you're right, sometimes you'll find that you're wrong. I've been wrong plenty of times. Fucking my job, I'm wrong all the fucking time. I diagnose cars wrong. I'm not perfect. Nobody's fucking perfect. So always just do your best to discern what the truth is. Be patient with other people, understand they have biases, understand that you have biases, go into things realizing that and kind of move forward with that. So um if you guys don't got any more questions, super chats, or anything, I appreciate everybody watching so much. Make sure you go check out Cry tomorrow night. I have Kyle Anselo and Patrick McFarlane and Connor Freeman returning to the show. I think it's gonna be a really, really fun show. We're gonna talk about the 2 years in Ukraine, Israel, and the 2024 election, probably, and just all that good stuff. So if you are not subscribed, please make sure you subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Fountain, you name it, anywhere you get your podcast, please, please, please leave a review, guys. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for the super chats to show one more time. Like the video, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. So that way my word gets out there and hopefully you guys have been enjoying. I will see you guys tomorrow with the guys from Libertarian Institute. And until next time, love you guys. Take care.